afternoon. Welcome to EduSat Network. Friend, as you know, we are having discussion on content analysis, but we will not discuss the method, research method as the content analysis is defined there. But we would like to know the nature of the content. Media studies the importance of news. You all know, but what should be the dimension of the news? That should be the focus to understand. Without understanding the composition and the nature and the dimension of news, we can't analyze it and we can't do justice with the research. So we have to understand what is the news, what's the composition of content. And for discussion of this very topic, we have in the studio Dr. Suhas Dhulia. He is a academician and has been knowledge of working. He has been experience of working as a professor and also have experience of working in the newspaper and the different channels. So I hope his knowledge and experience will help us to understand this topic in a new perspective. And Dr. Dhulia is presently heading the School of Journalism and Mass Comm in IGNOU. So and before moving here, he has also been professor in Indian Institute of Mass Communication. So I hope his knowledge will help us. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Dhulia for EduSat lecture on this very topic. Welcome.
Thank you. Today, as has been explained, we will be discussing the content of media, how to analyze the content of media, how the content is developed, how it is formed, how it is delivered. Now, to analyze and understand media content or the content of news, first of all, we must have adequate understanding that what news is. We must understand different dimensions of the news. So today we will start from very basics, that what makes news. Because to understand content, it's very important that we understand that what are the governing concept of the media, that some of the events are perceived to be news. Because thousands of events occur in the world, across the country, and only few of them will make the news. So what are these concepts? On what basis one particular event is perceived to be news? Now, if we define the news as the term news means something new, that is something which is new information is the news. That is the most important component of the news. Now, second is how we look at a subject. News is also that as journalists, we can create something new from a reality that is existing there for a long time. Now, for example, if you visit a village, now village is in existence for very long period of time, and nothing new in the village as such, but you have a vision, you have creativity, that you can look at the village from totally new perspective. You are looking at it as something totally different. You are writing something new and something different. Now, another dimension of news is to look at a subject from totally new perspective, different perspective, and here a great amount of creativity is required. Now, third dimension is that, as we all know, news is something unusual. Now, news is that something, how things works and how things are supposed to work and how they really work. When we say that something should be work in this manner and it's not working in that manner, then it makes a news. Now, briefly we can say something which is negative event will make a news. 5 houses burned is news, but 100 houses built is not news. 5 bureaucrats corrupt is the news, and 100 bureaucrats honest are not news. So whenever there is any deviation from a normal conduct, whenever there is deviation from how things should normally work, then it makes news. Now, these are the 3 dimensions that one particular incident will make the news. Now, news is also it's current. News, we can say briefly that news is a report of any current event, idea or problem which interests large number of people. It's very important that news but interests large number of people. When as a journalist you are writing a news story, you must, that means, think in terms that who are the people who will be interested to read this story. That's very, very basic element of the news story. If you are suffering from flu, that's not the news. But if the Prime Minister of this country is suffering from flu, that's big news. Now that's where it matters. That means what are the incident or problems or issues or opinion that people are interested to know. They are curious about it. Only then it will make the news. Now news have one more dimension, that news is perceived different in different situation. In one particular situation, something may not be news, and in different situations, same thing may be the big news. So in different political environment, in different cultural environment, in different economic environment, the governing concepts of the news will differ from incident to incident. Something that is perceived to be the big news in American media may not be the same in our media, and something that is perceived to be major event in our country may not be that much important in the Western media. So there is a great amount of cultural difference, there is a great amount of political difference, and in different environment, in different situations, news concepts will differ, and different kinds of incidents, different nature of incidents will become news. Now, how we structure the news story. We have defined what news is. Now, moving to the structure of the news story. Now, news is primarily, that means we have these components of the news. First, we have intro, that means this is the crux of the event. This is the essence of the events. Some train accident in Faridabad, 10 people died, 50 injured. Intro is, in a train accident near Faridabad, so many people died, so many injured. Now, straight coming to the point, that what really happened. What is the essence of the story? Now, in fiction, for example, we also call that news structure is inverted pyramid. We call it inverted pyramid. In fiction, the climax is at the end of it, while in news, the climax is the intro. What really happened? If we watch the movies or we read fictions, then the climax is the end of it. So news is in inverted pyramid format. So intro is the essence of the event, what happened, and then in the next paragraph we have to elaborate the intro. Elaboration means just elaborate that what we say, will come to that answering some more questions, satisfying some more curiosity about the incident, and then we have descriptive details, describing an incident. Now, descriptive details are very, very important if there are some accidents, some earthquakes, where describing the environment, describing what really is happening is crucial. But maybe in some other situation, for example, if you are covering a press conference, it's quite possible that you are describing the environment is not that important. But what important is that what the political leader is saying. So descriptive details are important in certain situation. Then we go to the additional information, and then background information. Background informations are crucial because background informations means that you are placing that event in a context. You are relating it to the different context. Why it happened, how it happened, and what is the background. Now, for example, we just mentioned that if there is accident, then at the background information would mean that you are narrating that what happened in last 6 months or 1 year, what were the reasons, causes of these accidents. That these are the background informations that to place the incident in a context. And then we always, a news report must answer these 5 questions. We call it 5W&H: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Every news report must answer all these questions. That is the crux of the story, that a news report must answer these. That means answering these questions means the story is complete. The story is complete. Now, that is broadly the structure of the story. That is broadly that what a story should contain, what kind of information it should contain. It must answer these 5W&H, all these questions, then the story will become complete. Now, as a journalist, what are the skills that are required? You want to become a journalist, what is required? To become a journalist, the first condition is you must have a fairly good command over the language, whichever language you want. The command over the language is crucial because we can broadly say that there are three components of journalism, of a journalist. What makes a journalist? The first is a journalist has a great command over the language. Second is a journalist is a thoroughly informed person. He is an informed person. That means he knows every bit of the things that is already in the public domain. And then a journalist is key. That means the key attribute of a journalist is that he or she has the knowledge and understanding of current and contemporary issues. Now, to be informed, to be knowledgeable, and then to understand the current and contemporary issues. And then the third component is the professional skills. Now, first is you have information. Second is you have knowledge to analyze these informations. You have understanding of those issues. Now, you gather the information, you understand the information. And the third component is to convert these informations by applying your knowledge into a news format, which we can say the part of the script. You have professional skills to convert very complex and complicated information into a format that is called news. And it's called news because a common man in the street can understand it. Newspapers are not read by consulting dictionaries. So you have those professional skills as a journalist that you can convert or you can present very difficult and complex information in a very simple format. We say spoken language, short sentences, small paragraphs. These are three basic principles that how we write a news story. And that's why journalist is a communicator. A journalist is a communicator because he or she has professional skills to present very complex, very complicated incidents, informations in such a format that is easily, that means it can communicate the message easily. A common man can understand. A journalist is a mediator between information and the people. He is a delivery mechanism to deliver that information in such a format that a common man can understand it. Now, we discussed that a journalist ought to be fully informed. Now, how this information, how we become informed? Now, the primary challenge for a journalist is he or she must be informed about every bit of information that is already known, that is already in the public domain. That means he or she must be informed about it. If we have to evaluate an information in terms of whether it's new or it's old, this would mean that first challenge is you must know or you must be informed of what is known. Only then you can evaluate that this bit of information is new information. Now, for example, if the food minister says today that this year the food grain production will be this much billion tons, and you make that as a story, but it's quite possible that the same statement has been made, say, a couple of weeks back. So, if you are not informed what is already known, then this kind of mistakes may occur. And how you get informed? How you acquire knowledge? We said three attributes. First is command over the language. Second is knowledge. That means first to be informed and second to be knowledge. And third is the professional skills to deliver that information and the knowledge. Now, you have to undertake a kind of exercise. How news are written. Now, first is to know every bit of the information that is already in public domain, means we have to consult written sources. Written sources means we scan the newspapers. Now, a journalist is not a specialist, but a journalist at particular point of time is a fully and highly informed people of one particular subject. Now in journalism we use the term beat. Beat means Home Ministry is a beat, Petroleum Ministry is a beat, Foreign Ministry is a beat. Similarly, in city reporting, crime is a beat. In Delhi, Municipal Corporation of Delhi is a beat, NDMC is a beat, State Assembly is a beat. So these are the different beats. That means beat means every reporter or correspondent is assigned an area or a topic that is he is reporting continuously on that area. Now beat means at one particular point, whenever you are assigned a beat, the first challenge is to consult the written sources. To know everything about that beat, if you are assigned Petroleum Ministry, then your first challenge is to read everything, every bit of the information that is already known. That is available in the newspapers, that is available on the website. You must understand the petroleum industry. You must understand the mechanism, the prices of the petroleum products. You must understand the global market of the petroleum. So every bit of information, when you know it, only then you are an informed person and you know that this is something new that has occurred and it makes the news. Now first thing is that whenever we have some beat, we first become fully informed about our beat. And second is, gathering information is one thing. Now to become informed is the first step, and second step is to acquire knowledge. How we analyze the information, how we interpret the information. For analyzing and interpreting information, we need to have a knowledge of the subject. We need to develop some understanding of the subjects. Now, second categories of the sources we can say are the sources of knowledge. Now, first is to be informed and second is to be knowledgeable. And to be knowledgeable means we can consult experts. Experts are major source of knowledge. Second is books, articles. Now in newspapers, the common practice is, if some news is reported today, the opinion writing editorial article will appear the following day. Now the idea is first to impart the information, first to make the people informed of that incident, and second is then to make them knowledgeable, to give interpretation to that information, to analyze that information. So our sources of knowledge are experts, books, articles, and then we have great amount of resources to gather the information and the knowledge. Now we have internet. Now these are the two steps. Then third category of sources is what we call sources of experience. Now for example, an accident has occurred. Then the people who are injured, because they experienced the accident, they are the key source when you are reporting that accident. Now if government has launched some major development project and you are doing a reporting on that, when you go to a village, you gather the information, you find out from the people who are either benefited by that project and who are denied the benefits of the project because of not proper implementation. Now these again are the sources of experience. People who experience that thing, to gather information from them. That is another category of the sources. And one is your own field budgets. You go to a village, you go to the site of an accident, you observe there. A journalist is generally, mostly, not a primary source of information. A journalist is always dependent on the secondary source of information. If a accident has occurred, then a journalist is not there when the accident occurs. A journalist reaches there after so many hours. So how to identify the sources? Then sources are people who are involved in the relief work, the administrative sources, the railway sources, the security sources, hospital sources, relief workers. That's how you identify that what are the sources that we gather information from. But then again, when you describe that incident, because you are there, you are present there, so what you are saying is you are describing it. And describing means you are the source of information. Now, this is another category of sources when you observe something. What you observe and how you report it. And then comes the question of this, if this is a process of moving from unknown to known. As journalist, you are assigned some subject to report, and you are totally ignorant about that subject. So you undertake this process. That means when you know nothing about it, and then you reach a stage when you know a great amount of information and you have a great amount of knowledge about that subject. Now this process from moving unknown to known is, that means we are filling the gaps. We have a subject, for example, we are reporting some of the major development project of the Government of India. Now there is always great amount of controversy with regard to development projects. Now during election campaigns, so many charges, counter charges are made that funds were not used properly. Now if you are reporting this kind of a government development project, again you undertake this exercise. First is you gather the information about that project, then you try to interpret the information, you get in touch with the experts that what are the implications of this project, what kind of impact it will create on our national economy, what kind of employment it will generate. So that means you are gathering knowledge about that subject. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, that you go to the villages and then you gather the information from the common people for whom that project is meant. Now again, you are always in this process, you are always identifying the gaps, that here is my news story and here are the gaps, I need more information. Now after undertaking this exercise, written sources, sources of knowledge, sources of experience, your own observations, then you identify the gaps and then you move to what we call the research interviews. You get in touch with the people who are associated with the development project. It may be block development officer, it can be the officials working at the district level who are responsible for the implementation of that project. You gather information from them, that why this happened and how this happened. Continuously you are gathering information, and you know you are identifying the gaps in the news story, that here is some gap, I need to fill it. It's something like construction of a house, that you know here is something is missing. Here and there, these are the gaps that I have to fill. It's the same kind of exercise that you have to undertake. And if you take this exercise, then you can always go to some person who is overall responsible for that project. And after all these preparations, if you interview that person, then you will be well prepared. You will be fully equipped to ask right kind of questions. And again, when you are identifying the gaps, again going back to these 5 W and H. These are the cardinal principles of writing news story. Every journalist, every correspondent, every sub-editor, he has to take care that news story is answering all these questions. So always keep in your mind that when you are reporting anything, then you are always identifying the gaps by repeatedly asking yourself these questions. Who, what, when, where, why and how. When you have answers of all these questions, then you can say that you have filled all gaps in your story, and your story is now complete story. Now, how the newsworthiness is decided. You have gathered the informations, you have developed professional skills, you have all the knowledge. Now, whenever you are working for a news organization, every news organization has its own some kind of a concepts that will govern the news selections. Now, broadly, these are audience, impact, consequences, proximity, timeliness, prominence, context, policy parameters, specific information value, and unusualness. These are the major elements on the basis of which newsworthiness of an event is determined. How many people are interested? What is going to be the impact of that event? What are going to be the consequences? And second is proximity. Something that will occur in Delhi will be important for Delhi newspapers. Now we say that nearest is the dearest. We are more interested to know about what is happening in our neighborhood. And something in Chennai is more important for Chennai newspapers. It may not be that important for Delhi newspaper. Then prominence is, timeliness is means timely story. For a newspaper, 24-hour news cycle is timely. What will happen in 24 hours must happen the next day. A story that is 2 days old is not worth of it. This is stale. For a 24/7 news channel, the deadline is every minute, every hour. It keeps on updating. So timeliness for a 24/7 news channel, radio channel is always there, but it's continuous kind of a thing. A newspaper has 24-hour cycle, so the timeliness is 24 hours. Then the prominence. Who are the people involved? How important they are? That makes that another element, that how you perceive newsworthiness of an event. And then in what context that event has occurred. In one particular context something is important, in some other context it's not important. If there is some major terrorist attack on India, then every statement of the Prime Minister on terrorism is very, very important because something has occurred. But if there is nothing of that sort is happening, then if he says something, it will be a general observation. It's not that important. So in one particular context, a statement will become important. If something is going on between India and Iran or India and Pakistan, every statement during that period on that topic is important. But in some other situation, same statement may not be that important. And then every news organization has some policy parameters. These parameters also govern the selection of the news story. Now, for example, if you television news channels, for television news channels, the stories which are visually very rich, which are very juicy, which are very interesting, which can grab the attentions, they are more important. And there is a great amount of criticism about the news programming of television channels, because they are governing concepts at this point of time. Governing concepts are kind of a sensationalism. They are picking up only those events which are highly sensational. Now for TV channel, because it's the visual medium, and because of this element also, seminars or workshop or that kind of events are not news at all. Now that's the limitation of the medium also, because it's a visual medium. But again, because it is a medium of sensationalism at this point of time. Now they have these concepts, so that will influence their news, that means the news selection. Similarly, every newspaper has a different character. A newspaper may be very critical of the government. A newspaper may be slightly pro-government, pro-BJP, pro-Congress. Every newspaper will have some kind of a political orientation, and that political orientation will also influence the news selection. So whenever you are analyzing the content of the news story, you must look into this political orientation. When you analyze the content of the news stories, you analyze the content of any newspaper or any news channels, you have to identify what is the political orientation. And then of course something which is unusual also makes news. And how we go about the news. That means we have some story idea. And story idea that we select, again it depends on the news organization. What are the demands of the news organization? What are the requirements of the news organization? Who are the target audience of that news organization? Every newspaper, every news channel, it has one specific target audience. It's catering those audiences. Now to analyze the content of the media, it's very, very important that what are the story ideas that a news organization will pick up and will perceive as newsworthy. Because every event is not equally newsworthy for all news organizations. It will always differ. So first is identifying the story idea. That what story idea your news organization is identifying. Then they formulate the story ideas. And they identify the problems, what the problem is. Formulation of the problem means identifying different aspects of that problem. And then you go for a kind of preliminary research and feasibility study, whether the story is feasible or it's not feasible. And again, every news organization, every reporter will go for a plan of action. Will prepare some synopsis. And again, whenever a journalist is working on those ideas, again you have to go back, you have to refer back to same thing that we discussed. Written sources, sources of knowledge, sources of experience, field visits, that means observations, then research interviews. That's very, very important. Again, one has to undertake this exercise. Now coming to the critical issues, that how you analyze media content. We have these, we say that in professional journalism, credibility of the news story is very, very important. Credibility is the primary, that means responsibility that a journalist has to perform to make the news story credible. And for that we have accuracy, fairness, balance, attribution and objectivity. These are the basic principles of news writing. And now here is the crux. When we say news is biased, news is one-sided, that's the issue, that what is objectivity? Because a news story must be factual. But again, what facts that we are selecting? In generally we say that a news story should be objective. But objectivity is a concept which cannot be achieved because there is no universal perception of objectivity. There is saying that there are three sides of every story: your side, my side and the truth. Now this saying clearly reflects that what we perceive as a truth. In critical issues, in sensitive issues, there are different perceptions. An event is reported differently. Now for example, if there is a communal riot, which is so frequent in our country, Hindu-Muslim riots, then it's very, very important that what kind of facts are selected, what kind of visuals are selected, what are the information that is being highlighted. So one may be factual, but again it doesn't mean one may be truthful. Because if a journalist is very selective, that means to pick up only one unique kind of the categories of the facts, then report will communicate a message. So facts themselves are not truthful in our profession. And then again the question of objectivity is that what we perceive as truth. The truth is that there is a small world that is within the domain of our direct experience. We live in a city, we live in a town, we live in a village. We move around, we see, we watch, we interact. That's a small world that we experience ourselves. We don't need any news channel for that. We don't need any information channel to know about these subjects. But again, there is a vast world that we don't experience directly. Every bit of information about that world is through some channel of information. It may be newspaper, it may be radio station, it may be television, it may be internet, or it may be that means somebody is telling you about that event, but we are dependent on some information that we are getting from some channel of information. Now we can briefly say that the world that we experience ourselves is a small world, and rest of the world is the world of our images, information images. To what extent, in what way, what kind of information we have about that subject. Because whatever information we will get, we will form that perception. Name any subject, you say Nagaland or Manipur, or you say Africa, South Africa, Latin America. You name anything and there will be an image will flash in your mind. And that image is based on what kind of information we got about that subject. Now this is a world of information that we live in. Now think about it, any topic. Just think about it and an image will flash in your mind. And that image is because whatever information you have been exposed of on that subject. Now this is the basic crux, that if you are analyzing any media content, this is the foundation of an analysis. That what is our perception of objectivity? What kind of terminology is being used? Now for example, you take an example of Afghanistan or Iraq war. What term can be used? Whether you will say America is fighting for democracy, its operation liberation, whether it's war, whether it's occupation. Now by using one term we are communicating a message. Now if you take the reporting of Afghanistan, you will see that generally the sufferings of the Afghan people is hardly highlighted. It's always some kind of violence which is reported in a very mechanical manner, and human miseries are ignored. Now that's how we always, if we focus on one particular dimension of incident, then we are not objective. And whatever image that we have formed about that subject, that our perception will be influenced about that level of information. Now when we say accuracy, then that means our fact should be accurate. But when we say objectivity, that means some kind of a judgment. We are judgmental because we are perceiving that this our perception of that truth, which is not universal. A news report on the political situation in this country is not objective for all political parties. If BJP thinks it's objective, it's highly biased for the CPM. If Congress thinks it's very, very objective news analysis, then it's not objective for say BJP or for the left. So these are the perceptions that we form, and we look at the world, we look at a subject the way we want it to exist, the kind of image that we have formed about that world. Now the question is how you gather the information, how you interact with the sources, and why at times the headlines of the newspapers are very, very stereotyped. Someone expressing concern over the rise of terrorism, some politician expressing concern over the inflation. Expressing concern is not news. The point is, if a political leader is saying, then the political leader must say that if their government is in power, what steps they will take. Be specific. So if there is an allegation that Congress government is corrupt, then this is not enough. Ask, say, how do you know it? What are the facts? What are the figures? There are facts and figures, of course, but then these facts and figures are more important. Now asking that kind of a question. if an opposition party is critical of some government policies, it's very right kind of a question to ask that if you come in power, what policy you will adopt. It's important to ask how do you know it? Because in our public life, all kind of allegations are labeled, all kind of observations are made. Always ask that how do you know it? Where are the facts? Where are the figures? Now, where are any kind of a research that has been conducted? On what basis these conclusions have been drawn? That means how do you know it important? To ask for facts and evidences. And finally, never ask very obvious questions that will solicit obvious answer. On number of occasions, specifically in television news channels, the questions are asked which will solicit an obvious answer. Now the major challenge is how to ask a question that will solicit or that will bring out some information that really is the newsworthy. There is saying that is being revealed is not news. But what is being concealed is the news, and how to dig out that what is concealed. That is the challenge for a journalist. How to ask so penetrating question that will bring out that information which is being concealed. That's the major challenge of journalism. And when you are analyzing media coverage of a newspaper, when you are evaluating the content of the newspaper, you have to take into consideration all these dimensions of journalism, all these dimensions of the news. On what basis a news is selected, which dimensions of that news are highlighted, what is the angling of the story, what is the headline, on what basis that headline has been picked up. Then what are the concepts, governing concepts of the selection? What is the bias? In what sense the story is objective? What kind of facts were selected? I will conclude by narrating a folk tale to you. 6 blind men and an elephant. I think most of you have heard that folk tale. 6 blind men were quarreling with each other that how when an elephant looks like. Then they decided that they will go and see the elephant. See the elephant for a blind man means they gather information by touching something. They touch it. They gather information by touching it because they cannot see. So they went to an elephant, and then all 6 blind men start collecting information by touching the elephant, different parts of the elephant. Now one blind man said that an elephant is like a pillar because he touched his feet. Another said that it's like a snake because he touched his tail. Another said that it's like a fan because he touched his ear. Now 6 blind men, they formed 6 different images of that elephant, and none of the image was close to the reality. Now the crux is because each one of them got exposure of one part of that subject and formed that image on the basis of that information. And that information was nowhere close to reality. That is the crucial issue, that what kind of information are being selected and whether that information actually reflects the total reality or only one section of the reality. Take number of the issues, how they are being reported. One particular kind of incidents are reported and rest are ignored. And when they are ignored, that means they do not exist for us. And that is the entire, that means the challenge before the journalism. This is the key tool of analysis, that what is being selected, what is being reported, what facts are being selected, which dimensions is being highlighted. So I'll conclude here. If there are any questions, we can discuss them.
Okay, you talked about the dimension of news and the various elements that need to be considered while reporting, and also what are the biases, what could creep into the news reports, and etc. Different facets of the news reports. But I would like to know from you that if some students want to do a research on the, like, there are various things that need to be analyzed or need to be researched, like presentation of hunger, violence, gender, Naxal, terrorism, or the BJP, Congress, policy discourses, programs. So what they need to do?
Well, I think briefly the framework that I have discussed, that framework has to be used. That be understanding the media. Bias maybe in terms of the picking up the phrases. What phrase you are picking up? What language is being used? What are the questions that are being framed? Which dimension is being highlighted? Now that's very important. Now, if you are analyzing the content of the coverage of the issues that you mentioned, then definitely that means first thing that there may be a quantitative analysis. That in terms of the quantity, how much is being reported on those subjects. And second stage is that how it is being reported. How much is the coverage of the environment? How much is the coverage of the gender issues? How much is the coverage of the education or poverty or hunger or even the rural populations? How much is the coverage? Why these issues are getting marginalized? What is the impact of so-called market? What are the target audience? Why one particular newspaper is giving importance to one particular kind of the events? Why? That means the hunger, the poverty, the struggle of the people, what is happening in the rural areas is being ignored. These are the issues that you have to pose. These are the issues that have to be evaluated. The same thing again, that what is the process of news making decision.
Okay.
How things are being selected. Its entire process is the gatekeeping process. That what events are being selected and what facts within those events are being reported.
Okay, so like suppose we talk about the policy cabinet decisions, because at the time of parliament there are many decisions taken, but that are not reported. We can say only conflict what is going inside or outside the parliament, that is reported. So in that case, first thing what you suggested, that a number of stories regarding the decision the published in the different newspaper, then their nature or the elements which have been covered, these two things be done.
Yes, you see, the point is, media is a media of conflict. Now, whether we like it or we don't like it, but media reports only those events where there is an element of conflict. In fact, when we discuss the principles of evaluating newsworthiness of event, that this is one of the key areas, that conflict is the news. So now, this is because of market-driven journalism also.
So naturally, then this is not the research. Now the research is to be what people want and what media is presenting.
Yes, research may be that to what extent media is driven by this conflict factor. That can be research. That you can analyze entire newspaper. That you can say, now for example, at times if you look at the front page of a newspaper, all the stories are negative stories. It's violence, accident, corruption.
4C, 3C, what?
That's what's happening. And then at times it is said that world is not that bad, the way it appears in the media. It's not that bad, because this is media of conflict. So conflict is always the news. Now somewhere I think a meaningful research can be undertaken, that how these conflicts are becoming the news, and what kind of perception they are shaping among the people.
Okay. Means the base of the conflict that need to be why they are reporting.
Why conflict is news?
Okay.
Now, for example,
okay,
why conflict is news? Whether this is because in the human nature that we want to read only conflict stories,
okay,
or whether media is shaping that perception that conflict is only the news. Why we perceive that report of a developmental issue is not readable. Why we cannot think in terms that it can be made readable. How you report it. But why developmental issues should not be readable. It is readable, it depends how you present it. Now you can say sex, violence, conflict are something that naturally attract people's attention. But some of the issues are dependent how you present them, how creatively you present them.
So that is true. They want to know that things, but they
Of
need to
course.
know something others.
That's issue of the research. That how now, for example, in television news channels, when you discuss the issues with their bosses, they always claim that that's what people want.
Yeah.
Now, ask them that how do you know it that people want this? And that's where research is. How this what people want is being misinterpreted. What are the perception that on what basis you can claim that people want it?
But
for example, when I discuss that, what kind of questions should be asked? Now, this is very general statement to say that people want it. Ask them, how do you know that people want it? Where is the research? So that's where these are the issues of the research. That how you evaluate what people want from the news organization. Whether people want from news organization entertainment, the kind of entertainment that is being offered, I don't think so. From news organizations, people they want news. It's as simple as that. If I am going to a bookstore, I am going there to buy a book. If I am going to a medicine shop, I am going there to buy medicines. Now, in today's scenario, things are getting mixed up. News, entertainment, fiction, and getting mixed up.
okay, so if somebody want to do research on the topics which I suggested, like say violence, and if I get news related to violence over these decades, so for that a researcher need to conduct an interview with the person who allowed that violence story to be given a space in the newspaper.
Yes, that's the research can be how violence is being reported.
Not necessarily that the person allowed it to, editor
Why-
allowed it
how
to
it
be.
is being reported.
Okay.
What kind of coverage is being given, what kind of angle is being given, to what extent it is being sensationalized, to what extent it is defeating the social purpose to discourage the crime. Now, these are those dimensions that can be researched.
Okay. So as you suggested, that shaping the perceptions uh, uh, will be only through these negative stories. What the conflict story appeared in the newspaper or the channels. So the audience or the readers have no other option to look at the other side of this story. So naturally, what is in the newspaper, what is in the channel, came as in news reports, that will shape the mind of the viewers.
Yeah, I think that is the these are the issues of the research. The issues of the research, that what kind of word media is presenting, what kind of images media is generating, and what the reality is. Now, disconnect between media representation of reality is something that should be researched.
Okay.
But the ideology of the media,
Mhm.
why media is negative always, and second is how, what kind of reality, that means that media representation of the reality is the crucial thing.
Okay, it means there is a gap between reality and the representation.
Of course, there is always a wide gap because the selection of the media. One particular categories of the events are considered newsworthy.
So the researcher's first job is to identify the gap and then present the other information.
Yes, I think the primary challenge is media representation of the issues.
Okay. And
First
then
is the issues that they are presenting, how they are being presented, and second is what are the issues that are being ignored and why.
okay, and that I should made available to the viewers and one solicit the response of the viewers.
Yes, yes.
What do they say?
Yeah, yeah, because in what way the perceptions of the people are formed, and what role media has played in that.
Okay, means researcher
Yes.
have to give them alternatives,
Yes.
options. If this could have been the story, what your perception would be?
That means, for example, they can analyze the media content, and then they can approach the audience with some question, some questionnaire, to get their responses and try to identify the disconnect. Try to identify, that means, for example, your research can be conducted that how the ownership pattern of the media is influencing the content. If it's a corporate controlled media, then it will not attack the corporate interest. If the media is owned by the government, it's not going to attack the government. If media is owned by a political party or some individuals, it's not going to criticize them. Now there is saying that the press freedom belongs to those who owns it. Now the point is, for example, research can be done on the ownership pattern. Research can be done, that means believability of the media, credibility of the media. People can be asked that to what extent they believe in the news that media is presenting to them. And to what extent they think that this story is credible. And these are the issues that can be researched. That what are the people perception of the news coverage that media is presenting to them. And these are the issues in terms of the credibility, in terms of believability, in terms that how to what extent people find the news stories truthful.
Okay. So, well, friends, with this we conclude the lecture, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture. And on your behalf, I thank Dr. Subhash Dhalia for giving such an insightful lecture on content analysis and the different dimensions on the news. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.